Everybody.
Thanks for joining us
Welcome.
today. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining Score Main today. My name's Jasper. I'm the client services manager with Score Main. I'm joined by Dani Nemeth, one of our mentors, who's our HR expert for today's presentation on becoming an employer and hiring your first employee in Maine. We are a resource partner of the SBA, if you didn't know, and we help clients from all stages of the business cycle from pre-start to exit. I do want to thank today's sponsor, which is the Maine Technology Institute, one of our partners in crime for a long time here. They're great resources there. If you don't know about MTI, feel free to check out their website. And otherwise, if you have any questions, feel free to cue them in the chat or utilize the raise hand function. And otherwise, Dani, why don't you take it away?
Everybody, welcome to today's presentation. It's about becoming an employer in Maine. And just an FYI, I'm getting over a cough, so I might be a little scratchy, but hopefully I will be able to make it through and give you a great presentation. So I am Danielle Nemeth, and I am a SCORE mentor. So any HR support that you could use, feel free to reach out to your mentor, and they will reach out to me, and I can help you with any questions that you have. So we're going to get started. Again, we're going to get started, but if you want to put your name and nature of your business, any HR questions that you may have in the chat box, please feel free to do so. If you want to reach out to me via SCORE, please feel free to do so if you have any specific questions. And again, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. So who am I? I have 25 years of HR experience. I have a master's degree. I am born and raised in Maine. And again, SCORE is my favorite organization and my favorite job. So again, you can reach me through SCORE. So we're going to get started with talking about the essential steps when hiring. Before you can hire, you obviously need to have an EIN number, which is your social security number for both federal and state governments. We're going to talk about essential cost. We'll talk about job descriptions and job classifications. We're going to talk about employee handbooks and employment posters. And then we're going to talk about the new hire paper work. And then of course you'll be ready, set to go. But all of these things that we're going to talk about prior to the process of hiring. So there's a lot to prepare when you hire your first employee. So as I said earlier, applying for an EIN number, register as an employer so that you can pay taxes. Your EIN number is your social security number for your business. And you have to obtain an EIN number in order to have employees. It's how you're going to pay your taxes and how you're going to pay employment taxes. You need to register your EIN number with Maine Revenue Service so you can pay taxes as well. And then, of course, you want to register with the Department of Labor. So the cost of hiring an employee is so much more than just paying someone 20 bucks an hour. You have to calculate, obviously, the cost of the employee, but you also have to calculate any benefits that you may offer. And if you don't plan to offer benefits, there are still mandatory benefits that you have to offer, such as workers' comp. And in Maine, depending on how many employees and the size of your business, there are other costs to consider. So think about the cost, think about the mandatory taxes and a workers' comp insurance. Of course, just one employee triggers some of these taxes and some of these costs. Other miscellaneous costs that you need to consider are advertising, administrative cost, equipment, hardware, software. If they're going to have a cell phone, and that would be covered under it, sorry. Mileage, if you have them on the road, if they're driving, are you going to reimburse for mileage? Some cases you have to. And the cost of processing a paycheck. And again, the benefits cost. So additional considerations when you're hiring your first employee is setting expectations. I recommend that from day one, you set those expectations with employees. You have an employee handbook or a minimum, the employee, a code of conduct. So the employee handbook and the code of conduct sets those expectations. It clearly defines your policies, your rules, your procedures, all in one place. So when that employee starts, you'll hand it to them and it should cover things like dress code. It should cover things like benefits if you're offering benefits. It should be a guide that the employee goes to when they have questions. It also should cover what you want, what you vision your culture to be like, and what your values are. So the employee has an idea of what your mission is, what your values are, how you want your culture to be. And the employee will align themselves or should be aligned with those values. So from day one, you're setting those expectations. In addition, your handbook or code of conduct should cover legal compliance, which could include sexual harassment policies, which includes, again, code of conduct policies. It could include theft policies. It could include various different types of federal policies, federal being classifications, employment classifications, which we're going to talk about. It should say what the working hours are, when is payday, when they should be turning in their time sheets. It should cover a lot of these different things. It should cover a complaint process. So if they do have a complaint, who do they go to? It should also cover, what does paid time off look like? What are the benefits that you're offering? What does their compensation look like? And not that you want to have their exact compensation in there, but again, it's talking about how do you clock in? How do you clock out? When do you take breaks? When does payroll close? When does payroll open? So those type of things. And then, of course, if you are in an area that that requires a lot of safety, then I would recommend that you put safety in your employee handbook. The other thing you want to cover is payroll. How do you plan to pay the employee? How do you plan to deduct the taxes and how you'll pay those taxes? And the benefits deductions, are there benefits that you're going to be offering, such as health insurance, dental insurance? And then again, benefits. You want to list the summary of benefits. If you have the luxury of offering benefits when you're hiring your first employee, list what the plans look like and what they can choose from. It may be just one plan, but it could be multiple plans. List the eligibility status. Is there a probationary period that they have to sit through before they can get onto the benefits? List how much the employer is paying versus how much the employee is going to pay. Provide details about any deductibles, and then provide open enrollment forms. One thing, when you have one employee, the employees have a right to know what laws they are entitled to. It's employee rights. They have rights to know. Some of the things that the law says is that you have to provide information on such as things as the Fair Share Labor Act, the Americans with Disability Act, OSHA, workers' compensation. You have to provide information on child labor laws, equal pay, and then Maine specific laws such as Maine earned paid leave, and now with the Maine family paid leave. These are things that have to be provided in a break room somewhere where employees frequent, and you have to put these posters up. Now you can go to multiple different sites and print these posters off for free, or you can order them from one. There's a couple of organizations out there where you can order one big poster with all of these laws in there. It's under $100, so it's kind of like a one and done deal. And I apologize for my screen. If I don't touch it, it moves on me. So think about the posters and where you're going to publicly display them so that all employees can see. And that's a law that the employees need to be aware of their rights and their laws and the laws that protect them. Which again, you can go and get free posters by printing them one by one. The problem with that is to making sure that you have every single poster you need. Or you can buy a poster. There's multiple different carriers out there that sell state labor posters and federal law labor posters. And you can just get that poster and pin it to a wall. So let's start talking about the stages of the hiring process. So when you're ready to post the position, you really want to have a job description and clearly define what the position's going to do. Once you have the job description, you can post the position. You can start screening, interviewing, selecting the best candidate, and then you'll make an offer. And we'll walk through those processes. So, recruiting, again, identify the position, identify the functions that you need the person to do. So if you have a restaurant and you need a waitress, identify exactly what they're going to be doing. Are they going to be responsible for cashing out the employees? The clients, or are they just going to be solely responsible for delivering food, doing side work, taking care of the client? So be very specific in the job description, so they have clear expectations of what they can do, what they're going to be doing. So create the job description and then have an application ready so that they either can fill out online or come into your place of employment and fill it out. Think about the questions you want to ask in the interview process. Make sure that your questions are specifically related to the job. Here's where employers get in trouble. When they have a candidate come in and they start small talk. They start, "Hi, how are you? How's the weather?" And the candidate might say, "Oh, it's good. I took my kids to the beach." And then the employer, this is where they get in trouble. "Oh, you have kids? How many kids do you have?" And it may not be considered, it may be an innocent enough conversation, but if that person doesn't get the job, they might think that she didn't get the job because she had kids. So be careful on your small conversations with candidates. Keep it very specific related. If they bring up kids, they bring up family life, don't dig deep or don't engage in that conversation. Really, it's about the job. So outline your questions to be about the job. And then you want to post the job. Post the job, and there's various places you can post. One of the favorite places is Indeed, but Indeed is very expensive. So think about other venues that you can post at. ZipRecruiter, there's local free ones such as your local career centers. Try obviously social media, word of mouth to get qualified candidates. Then you're ready to conduct the job interview. So again, bring the candidate in, make them feel comfortable, keep the conversations to a minimum, and just talk about the functions of the job. Candidates should do 90% of the talking, and you should only be doing 20%. So a successful interview is when the candidates do most of the talking. So one of the questions could be, tell me about your work experience. And then the candidate will talk about that. And you can probe into the work experience. So if they say something like, I have 16 years of service experience in the medical field. You can say, exactly what did you do in the medical field and what job functions did you participate in, and let them do the talking. Let them explain their experience. Once you finish your round of interviews, select the best candidates. The best candidate doesn't necessarily mean the one with most experience. It could mean the one with good experience, but maybe a better culture fit than the one who's most experienced. So when you're selecting the best candidate, really think about all of the candidates and kind of make a list as to why you want to hire that particular candidate. Don't put things down such as they're over 50, because then you're being age discrimination, or you're maybe unbiasedly knowing that you're not hiring this person because they're older, but that can turn into age discrimination. So be very careful when you're selecting the candidate, and make sure that your selection is a culture fit, and make sure that you're really selecting that candidate because they're the best candidate for your organization. Once you make the job offer, you can negotiate the salary. So if you offer them 20 and they try to negotiate to 25, and you're telling them I can't do more than 21, and they agree, then you want to write a letter up and give them a letter saying that they accepted a position as a waitress, since we've been using that scenario, at the salary of $21 an hour, and their start date is, and they will report at this time, and they will report to on their first day. And then you want to say something like, we're very excited to have you come on board. And then you give them the offer. In the meantime, you may or may not run background checks. I recommend running background checks. It's not that expensive. It might be like $45 per person, but it is well worth the money. Or you can do your own reference checks, ask for references and do reference checks. And then finally, you are ready for the person to start. You're ready to onboard them. So you want to have all of their new hire paperwork ready to go. So the job application, there's one thing that you have to be careful about, is that is not asking about criminal history. If you have a job, or you want to know that somebody has a criminal background, that's when you don't want a criminal working for you, that's when you'd still go through the interview process, and then you'd make the offer, and you'd find out about their criminal background based on their background history, if that makes sense. So you can't ask about their criminal. There's some fields you can. So I think if you're in the medical field, depending on the position, you can ask about criminal background, or if you're working for a company, a bank that handles lots of money. Other than that, you really can't ask them if they ever been convicted of a crime. So before you run a background, you have to extend an offer. So you would need to extend the offer and then run their background check. If you see that they have criminal history and they're going to be working with a lot of money, then you can rescind the offer. So I want to go to, when you're creating your job description, think about the position you're hiring for and the level of responsibility that you're hiring. Is this person going to be eligible for overtime, or is this person not going to be eligible for overtime? How do you determine that? Typically, a position that's an exempt status, they're not eligible for overtime, have key responsibilities. Those key responsibilities are things like they supervise other employees. They make decisions that impact the business. They might do hiring and firing. Again, decisions that impact the business. There is a test that you can Google, and it will give you certain information, certain questions, such as like I just talked about. Is this employee hiring and firing? Does this employee make financial decisions? Is this employee supervising? And then if your question is yes, 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 they would be exempt. If your question or one of your questions are no, they might not, they wouldn't be exempt. They would be entitled to overtime. So here are some things to think about when you're doing your job description. Do the job summary. Why is what is the purpose of the position? Again, job responsibilities, it outlines primarily the task that the employee needs to perform. In a job description, you want to list the qualifications. What skills do they need to do the job? Do you want them to have prior customer service experience if you're hiring a waitress or anybody else in customer service? Do you want them to have experience? What kind of education do you want them to have? And then it's always good to list the physical attributes or the work environment. You know, are they going to be indoors? Are they going to be outdoors? Are they going to be standing for long periods of time, or are they going to be sitting for long periods of time? Are they going to be lifting any type of weights? You know, if you're in an office environment, you may want to put a standard of they have to lift up to 50 pounds. If that FedEx or Amazon package comes in and it might be a ream of paper, they've got to be able to lift that. So those are things to consider when you're creating a job description. And for job postings, think about the hiring process we just talked about, identify the need for the position, create a job description, prepare your questions, post the job. Again, posting jobs, attend job fairs or talk to your career center to get it as low cost as you possibly can. Think about the legal interview questions and the legal impact. Again, focus on asking the right questions. Ask behavioral-based questions. Behavioral-based questions allows the employee or the candidate to talk. And behavioral questions are, the example is, tell me about a time when you provided great customer service, versus yes or no questions. Yes or no questions being, do you have customer service experience? Yes. Okay. So see the difference in the questions. One allows the employee to talk, and the other one is just a yes or no. Avoid illegal questions, such as things on their personal characteristics, their family, what they do for hobbies. Don't ask about past wages. We no longer can ask about past wages or consider past wages. A lot of times, you know, just because they're making $20 an hour here, you're going to pay them 21 when your compensation structure could have been 22. So be very careful about asking what past wages are. Don't ask about criminal convictions. And then, of course, as always, don't ask and don't consider age, race, gender, religion, marital status, pregnancy status, military status, national origin, disability status. Don't ask any of those questions because you don't want to appear that you're being discriminatory. Again, preparing for the interview, be prepared, have a good understanding of the job. There's nothing worse than going into an interview and the interviewer doesn't really have a good feel for the job. They know they need somebody. They know that this person could be doing multiple things, but they're not very specific. Job application or have their job application or their resume available so you can discuss their qualifications. Have your interview questions ready and think about practicing asking those interview questions if you've never conducted an interview before. When you're taking interview notes, be very careful on what you're documenting. Again, document the specifics about the job. Document that she has 7 years of customer service experience. Don't document that she said she has 6 kids, or she said she takes care of elderly parents. Again, keep it specific to the job, because these interview notes become legal documents. So for some reason, if somebody felt discriminated against and filed a lawsuit on you or went to human rights, then you would need to produce these interview notes. And again, these interview notes become legal documents. As I said earlier, the candidate should do most of the talking. The candidate should do at least 90% of the talking, and you only do 10% of the talking. And if you think about it from a candidate's perspective, if I go into an interview and you asked me 2 or 3 questions, and then you did 90% of the talking, I'm going to leave the interview thinking, did I get the job? I would be very confused, because candidates should be ready to speak about their experience and their job. The decision should be made about their qualifications. It shouldn't be about everything you talked about. You really can't gauge good experience, what the candidate's experience is, if you're doing most of the talking. And I see that a lot with with people getting ready to hire their first employee. The employer is really excited to do all the talking about the job that they forget to ask the candidate questions, or they don't really get a sense of the candidate. And so they make a hiring decision either based on very little, or they make a hiring decision based on not really knowing the candidate, and then not really knowing if that candidate is a good fit or not. So if anything, make sure that you're doing 10% and they're doing 90%. When you're selecting that candidate, consider the long-term fit. Do you think this person is going to be able to grow in your organization? Do you see any growth potential? If so, then I would recommend extending an offer. Run that background check. In Maine, you must extend the offer before you run the background. And that includes taking any information. My daughter actually went into an interview and they took her driver's license, and I was very confused by that, because they are taking her information without a job offer. So now they have her personal information, and she didn't know better, and I didn't know it was going to happen. But now they have a picture of her driver's license, and there was no job offer. And me knowing the laws made me question, did the managers really know what they're doing? And then lastly, communicate with the other candidates that weren't selected. There's nothing worse than a candidate coming in for a job interview and then they're ghosted. They hear nothing, and they're left waiting to find out if they got the job. They might call you a couple of times to find out. So now we're wasting their time. So just send them a note, send them a text message. I prefer you call them, but communicate with them that they weren't selected for the position. So now you have the person hired, you have your posters, You have everything you need, your employee handbook, everything is in order to hire this person. This person is going to walk in to a very well organized company, and it's going to set a good impression because you're going to have ready a template. You're going to have their employee handbook, and in their employee handbook, it's going to cover the history and the missions and the values. They're going to have their offer letter that clearly states their start date, their job title, their classification, and how much they're going to make. You'll have their W-4 forms ready. This is an old slide that says 2023. Make sure you're using the latest and greatest tax forms. So you want 2025 tax forms. Same with the I-9 form. You want to make sure you're using the latest and greatest I-9 form, which you can get on the IRS, get on the government website, the Department of Labor website. Just Google 2025 I-9 forms. Have direct deposit forms or how you're planning to pay them. Have those things ready. Have your employee handbook. You're going to give them and review the employee handbook. Give them an acknowledgement form that it is their responsibility to read the employee handbook. It's their responsibility to abide by the handbook. And then give them benefits and a summary of their benefits. Talk about any safety or IT policies you may have, the do's and don'ts, which should be in your employee handbook. And then the next step would be bring them to their trainer or whoever they're going to report to. So in summary, we talked about a lot of things today. We talked about preparing for your first employee. We talked about applying for that EIN number. We talked about policies, payroll, how you're going to pay them, and benefits. We talked about the stage of the hiring process, including job descriptions, applications, job postings, the legal impact, questions. We talked about the interview process. We talked about the selection process. We talked about the job offer, and we talked about their first day on the job. So that is the end of my presentation. I am more than happy to take questions.
Yeah, we have a great amount in the chat actually that have been queued up, so I'll read through them. Starting with Ashel, this one may, start to breach into needing to contact a SCORE mentor, and a quick plug for that. If you aren't already working with a mentor, you can find one for free at score.org and enter your zip code right on the front page. But I do think that Ashel raises a great point that is something to consider as well. They're trying to figure out if they should work hard to keep the number of their employees under 5 to avoid the extra cost and hassle Maine has for businesses with over 5 employees, or if they shouldn't worry too much about that.
I wouldn't, it all depends on how you want your company to grow. I wouldn't worry about it. If you have ambition to have your company grow, don't let government taxes, don't let all of that stop you, right? All of that can be intertwined in the cost of where your clients are coming from. So I would not let it stop me at all.
Great. Let's see. Tiffany says they have an EIN, but do they need to notify someone that there's been a change? Tiffany, if you could clarify a little bit, a change in EIN or a change in your filing? Maybe we'll circle back to that one. Oh, or Tiffany, if you're on mute, but feel free to unmute yourself.
Yep. No, it's just I have it. It starts with a 99 number, and I just established this business as a sole proprietor. But then I think you get that number through the IRS, right?
Believe so.
So
Yes.
then do I need to call the IRS back and be like, okay, now I'm hiring people? And like, is there,
No,
okay.
no, you'll get your EIN number, and then when you go do your taxes or pay your quarterly taxes, it'll ask you for the EIN, but you'll also register that EIN with the state of Maine.
So I'm already registered, and when I did that, I had no idea that I was going to hire people. But now that I know I'm going to hire somebody, I'm just going to call everybody back, right?
Yeah, I don't think you don't have to notify
Oh, okay.
them.
Okay.
That all comes with your revenue, your revenue, you'll be paying
Oh,
those quarterly taxes.
okay. Okay.
Cool. We'll move on to the next question unless you have anything else. All right. Well, in any case, let's see. Ashel has another one. Is a code of conduct and employee handbook both needed, or can you just have one handbook?
So that's interesting. So a code of conduct, if you have an employee handbook, you have to include the code of conduct. You have to include, if you have an employee handbook, which you should, you have to include the laws. You can have a code of conduct without a handbook, but if you have a handbook, you have to include the code of the code, some of the laws in the code of conduct.
Okay, great. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Phil asks if things like those should be reviewed by a legal expert to ensure compliance with labor laws.
I absolutely would have them reviewed because these are labor laws, and you can do an HR consultant too to review it. So it's not as much as an attorney, but I absolutely would. These are laws. These are things you want to be compliant with. So, anybody can pull a handbook, but you want to make sure that it's compliant to both Maine and the federal government. I have a client and I reviewed their employee handbook and they did a copy and paste and they actually had things in there from California. And so now they're saying they're using California law. So you really don't want to be very careful if you're copying and pasting or using somebody else's handbook, because chances are they may have not had it reviewed either, but you don't want it choppy. You want it specific to Maine law and you want it specific to federal law. The other thing you want have guidance is, don't make things up. Be very clear. An HR consultant can help you be very clear in writing those policies and making sure they're applied to your business and state. A perfect example would be safety, right? If you're in a construction company, safety looks a lot different than if you're running a restaurant. So it wouldn't hurt. It'd probably be worth the investment. You might pay $200 to have an HR consultant review it. I would definitely say it would be worth doing that.
Great. May is wondering, May is starting up a PCA agency in Maine. They want to build high retention culture from day one. Who should they talk to, or where could they find guidance on which employee benefits actually move the needle for caregiver retention?
HR consultants can help you with that. A SCORE mentor can help you probably with that. Chances are if you go through SCORE, they'll reach out to me so I can help you with that too at no charge, right? That's part of SCORE. We won't do it for you, but we can certainly guide and mentor you. But to start, I mean, you're get your head on the right shoulders. You want to open the gates, starting strong with a good culture. So I would recommend, either reaching out to an HR consultant who can give you tips and tricks. Again, $200 for an hour per time to give you, things that you can do, have a look at your employee handbook, which is, I would say, an absolute must to really start setting a good culture and start setting those expectations. And then of course sorry, I got distracted. But so yeah, that's what I would do, is certainly touch base with someone who can help you with your culture right off the bat.
Thanks. Beth is wondering if an FEIN is the same as the EIN, or is that something we have to apply for separately?
No, it should be the same. Did I have it
Great.
backwards?
I'm not sure off the top of my head myself, but
That I'm like, did I have it backwards? Anyway.
Well, in any case, May is wondering if there's any onboarding tools or softwares you recommend.
If you're doing payroll and you're using a payroll company like, ADP or Rippling or Paylocity, some of them offer platforms. If not, some of them offer platforms that you can use, but it comes at a cost, right? So you can also get templates and keep paper templates if you're going to do paper, or if you're going to do electronic, look at templates to keep you organized. But some of the softwares do, or again, I'm reach out. I don't want to like continuously promote HR consultants, but reach out to a consultant too to help you guide with that.
Great. Circling back to the FEIN versus EIN, a quick Google says that there isn't any meaningful difference between the two. But
Thank you
yeah,
for that.
yeah, of course. May has another one, wondering if you can record an interview with your applicants.
As you can record the interview, and in Maine, you, as long as you're involved in the conversation, you can record without them knowing. But I would be very transparent with them and say, do you mind if I record the interview? And if they say no, no problem, then great. Be very careful, because that turns into a legal document, right? That's legal, right? But you can record them. I would just be very transparent with the candidate and say, do you mind if I record this interview? And if the candidate says they didn't want it recorded, then don't. But and don't use that as a hiring decision, but you absolutely can record it.
Ashel asks, is the interview the time to ask about availability and desired hours and salary?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Is the interview the time to ask about availability and desired hours and salary?
Yes, you can ask about hours, and sure, you can ask about that. Don't ask them what their salary was, but you can say, I need somebody Monday through Friday on site. I need somebody who can do X, Y, and Z, and the salary for this position is $25 an hour. You certainly can say that. You can't say, what salary were you making?
Got it. Thanks.
Beth asks, oh yeah, cool. Beth asks, what do you need to do to register an employee on the Maine Revenue Services and Department of Labor? I can't seem to find where to do that on their websites.
I'm sorry, repeat that question again.
So what do you need to do to register an employee on the Maine Revenue Services and Department of Labor? I can't seem to find where to do that on their websites.
Let me look that up and we can send out the link when we send out the presentation. I
Yeah.
haven't done it in a long time, and I know they've made some changes, but we'll look up the link.
All right. I'll make sure to include that in the follow-up email. And a quick plug too, we will be sending out a recording of today's presentation and the copy of the slide deck to peruse at your leisure, and as well as a link to applying to have a SCORE mentor if you don't already have. So great time to plug that. Anyway, Ashel has another one. On orientation day, if I have history, mission, value, culture, safety, IT, policies in handbook, do I need to highlight them separately, or should I just use the handbook as a training tool to cover all my bases?
You can use your handbook and give them a copy of it. That's what your handbook's for.
Great.
Okay, sweet.
And
Do I
May
recommend?
ask, yeah, you got it.
I just thought pop. Yes, I would. Yes, I would hire. I actually use a virtual assistant myself, and I'd be happy to share her name. But yes, I would use a virtual assistant. I use a virtual assistant.
Yeah, we've
Now,
it seems to be a burgeoning industry. We've seen a few of the people starting those up coming through the doors here at SCORE. So it's good.
Yeah, I would say that your virtual assistant, I wouldn't use them to review your employee handbook. I would definitely use an HR person for that or an attorney for that. But you could certainly use your virtual assistant to, do whatever you need to do administrative wise. But as far as, and they can even probably come up with behavioral based questions for you. But as far as reviewing documents, from a legal perspective, I would have definitely an HR professional or an attorney look at those.
Ashel has another one. Where and how would you recommend getting workers' comp insurance?
I mean, is it Google, right? Mimic is one of the big ones. Hartford's one of the big ones. I believe there's some small insurance companies, I know of a few small insurance companies that also offer workers' comp benefits, but it's no different than searching for car insurance, right? You can also talk to, if you're offering benefits, talk to a broker with that, if they have recommendations. But really, if you Google workers' comp insurance in Maine, you will certainly find some good vendors.
Okay.
Great. And it's also another one you could work with Score Mentor or your HR professional on.
Yes, good point. I appreciate all of you being here, and SCORE is an absolute fabulous resource, and they have a lot of experienced people. Like when you start thinking about doing accounting and booking and your books, your accounting books, consider applying for a SCORE mentor because they can help set you up in all of these processes. Right? They could, lean on your SCORE mentors and they're free resource.
Yeah. What we're here for, any field really, as long as we're helping you do it yourself, Score Mentor is here to help. And another plug there, just head right to the website. It's as easy as entering your zip code right on the front page of the site.
Yeah, if you're doing it yourself, which a lot of small businesses are because they can't afford services, then absolutely reach out to a SCORE mentor. They're great. They they can't provide legal advice, like they couldn't look at your employee handbook. Well, unless you get me, right? Because that's what I do for SCORE. But they can't look at these things and say, yeah, this is legally compliant or not. But they certainly can help you set up the structure of your HR department. They can help you set up the structure of your accounting, your books, bookkeeping. They certainly can do that. You have to do it yourself, but they can guide you for sure. So I know, and I'm biased because I'm a SCORE mentor, but I 100% recommend leaning on SCORE mentors. They're fabulous, and they have a lot
I'm
of
not a mentor
experience.
myself. I'm not a mentor myself, but I am the person that pairs everyone that comes into the state of Maine with a mentor. But if you're not in the state of Maine and you're attending today's workshop, we have chapters nationwide and experts nationwide. So if there's a field of experience you're looking for help in that we're not necessarily fluent in up here in Maine, we can find you someone throughout the country that has that experience. Well, hey, do we have any other questions today? Well, if anyone's queuing them up, I'll just read my closing little spiel here. Well, I do want to thank everyone for attending today's workshop. I want to thank Danny for putting on an amazing presentation as always. Like I said earlier, we will be sending you a copy of the slides to review, as well as a link to the recording to view at your leisure. You should receive this within a few business days, as soon as the recording becomes available, as well as that link we were talking about, but we'll keep you posted on that. You'll also receive a brief survey in this message that we really appreciate you filling out. We take your feedback seriously. And as a reminder, one more time, SCORE Maine and SCORE Nationwide offers free confidential one-on-one mentoring, whether you're starting or growing your business. It's easy to request a mentor by heading to the website and filling out your zip code in a brief form. We are a nonprofit partner of the SBA with 240 chapters around the country and 3 right here in Maine. Last year, we helped start 560 businesses in the state alone. And we've been helping entrepreneurs since 1964. And I want to thank our today's sponsor one more time, the Maine Technology Institute. And I want to thank everyone one more time for attending if there's no more questions. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.